Hey crew, welcome back to my channel for another flight attendant video. For those of you who are new, my name is Bridget. I'm a New York City based flight attendant, and today we're going to talk all about commuting, so stay tuned. So as you can see by the title and by the intro that you just saw before getting here, this video is about commuting. I have gotten a few crew members reaching out to me asking me to do a video on commuting. Since you guys know, or if you don't know, I am a commuter. I'm based in New York, but I do not live in New York. So I wanted to gear this video towards new hire flight attendants. First off, let's say congratulations to all the new hires that are on the line from the different airlines that are applying. And if you are interested in becoming a flight attendant, a lot of airlines are applying right now. So now is the time to get your application ready, submitted, and get yourself through the application and hiring process. So my first pro tip for you is that if you are a new hire and you are a commuter, meaning you don't want to live in the city that you're based, or it's not feasible for your family situation, I would not recommend straight commuting on probation. And what I mean by that is, say I have a 3-day trip and my 3-day trip signs in at 10 o'clock in the morning. I commute in day of. So I will take the first flight in the morning from my home to New York and then be into base the day that my trip starts. Why I'm saying I don't recommend that is, on probation, you can get let go for the littlest things. So you don't want it to be that you are let go after going through all of the training, all of the exams, all of the drills for commuting problems. You don't want that. So I would recommend, if you are a commuter, getting a crash pad. Yes, crash pads are not for everyone. I'm a person who I can attest and say that a crash pad was not for me. But if you're also a person like me who is not interested in crash pads, or just know personally that's not something that you can handle, you can get a hotel room. So commuting in the day before your rotation to make sure that you get to base on time, and then if necessary, depending on how late your trip releases, having a hotel room the night that your rotation ends. Some airlines have like a commuter clause, so that's something that you need to look into for whatever airline you're hired with, to see if that your airline has a commuter clause that provides you with a certain amount of hotel rooms per month. So there are things like crew rates, where hotels will partner with crew members and give them a discounted rate for staying there. And a good website to use is crewtel-usa.com. Shout out to Court to Fly because she put me onto this website. It does show you a lot of airports that are big bases for different airlines and what the rate is for that close by hotel airport. So I will link everything that I talk about in the description box below, but check that out if that's something that you do and you prefer to get a hotel room. That's a good resource to use. Now, one thing to say is hotel rooms can be costly, and being a new hire flight attendant, you aren't going to be getting paid that much. And then depending on where you're based, like New York City, hotel rooms are more expensive than they would be, say, in Orlando. So keep that in mind. I also want you guys to comment down below if you would be interested in me doing a crash pad video explaining the different crash pads and giving you some tips on what you need to know in order to look for a good crash pad and stuff like that. So comment that down below. So the next thing I want to talk about is basically breaking down the different options of commuting. And there's basically 3 main options. There's driving, the bus or train, and then obviously flying. So talking first about driving, this is an option if you live within, like, I guess it depends on your preference, a few hours difference of your base. One tip that I have for you is that you should research if your airline pays for parking in your home airport, whether that be you are parking your car there and getting on a plane to commute to work, or you are driving to your base, your airport base, and they pay for parking there. If that is not something that your airline offers, I would also look to see if the airport itself has any deals that they will give employees to pay for monthly parking out of pocket on your own. The next pro tip I have for you is go on Facebook, search, say if you're based in DFW flight attendant parking or something along that lines. Another big thing that you can do is, if your airline does not offer parking. The airport is not offering for you to pay for monthly parking or yearly parking, depending on how their system is set up. Check to see if nearby airport hotels have a crew rate where you can pay them a small amount to park your car there while you were on a trip, and then you ride the hotel van back to the hotel and get your car from there. That's also another option you can look into. Next form of transportation for commuting would be the bus and the train, and this is dependent on where you live or where your base is. Because I live in like the DC area and I'm going to New York, there are a lot of bus and train options for me, but that may not be the case for other people in other bases. So if you are in like a metropolitan area and that is an option for you, I'd check Megabus, I would check Greyhound, I would check Peter Pan, Bolt Bus, whatever bus systems you guys have in your area. And I'd also check the Amtrak. And the last most common option of commuting is by plane. People don't think of that, especially when I encounter people and they're like, oh, you're a flight attendant. Which airport around here do you work out of? And I tell them I'm based in New York. They kind of look at me crazy like, well, how do you get to work? And I'm like, I fly. So yeah, commuting by plane is the most common option for airline employees. And once you are doing that, you want to start off by looking at what routes your specific airline offers to get you from your home airport to your base airport. And if that is not something that is available, you want to look to see if in your area there is another airport that you can fly out of. So say we're going to stick with Texas. We'll say Houston this time. There's HOU. Is that Hobby or is that George Bush? I don't know. And then there's IAH. So there's 2 airports in Houston. So say you need to get to Houston airport because that's where you're based, but there's no flights going into Houston or they're oversold or something. Check out the alternate airport. The next pro tip that I want to stress for you guys is have hours in between the time your flight is supposed to land in your base and the time you're supposed to sign in for your rotation. You do not want to be cutting it close because you never know what could happen. A maintenance delay could happen. Weather can happen. Ground stops, ground delays, missing crew. You never know. So have that buffer so that if something does happen and you're delayed a little bit, it's not going to affect your report time. And once again, remember, you're on probation, so you don't want to sign in late. You don't want to give them any reason for them to have to think about terminating your employment. So the next big thing that I stress, even to some of my coworkers, flight attendant coworkers, is check other airlines. And not everyone thinks of that because they're thinking, well, I work for an airline, so why wouldn't I fly my airline? Yeah, that's your first choice, but not always is that the best choice for you, depending on the routes your airline flies in comparison to other airlines. So I would check other airlines to see what routes they have from your hometown to your base airport. But another thing you need to look into is that some airlines have restrictions while you're on probation with using your benefits on other airlines. So you want to check on that before you decide to try and book with another airline because you don't want to get in trouble. Once again, you're on probation. Another big tool that I use that I try to tell all flight attendants or all aviation workers about is an app called Staff Traveler. So with this app called Staff Traveler, you basically put in the city pairing that you are looking on booking a standby reservation with, and someone from that airline will give you the loads. And loads is basically telling you, oh, well, there's this amount of seats available, there's this many people on the list, and that should help you gauge if it's even worth you trying for that flight. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that when you fly other airlines, you are at the bottom of the standby list. Now, the last tip I have for you is not the best. It's not fun, but sometimes it's necessary depending on your commute. And it may be the only way that you can commute from your home airport to your base airport is a double commute. And what that means is, say I live in Sarasota, Florida, right? And I'm based in New York. My airline does not offer any direct flights from Sarasota straight to New York. So I have to double leg it. I have to go, say, from Sarasota to Atlanta and then Atlanta to New York. that may be something that you have to do for every commute. But if that's not the case and it's something that you have to do because the loads don't look good or promising, look into that. Say, even if it is that you may have to go out of the way to get back to your final destination, you remember you want to get to work. That's your end goal. So you want to do that however way is possible. Sometimes you have to get creative and go out of the way just to get to where you need to be. And I'll give you guys a quick story time about that. So if you guys don't know, my family's from Trinidad and Tobago, specifically Tobago, and I regularly visit, or pre-Panorama, I would regularly visit my family. So I spent my time there. It was time for me to come back home or come back to the States so I could work. And I wasn't flying my airline because my airline does not fly to Trinidad and Tobago, so I am now relying on other airlines. So I'm using Staff Traveler to look up the loads and everything, and I was supposed to be flying another airline, and the night before, the flight looked perfectly fine, and when it got to the day of, the flight looked horrible. So prior to this, I had backup plans to say, you know, if this doesn't work, I'll go this direction, I'll go this direction, I'll go this direction. Well, plan A didn't work, plan B didn't work, and I ended up having to use plan C. And plan C was me flying from Port of Spain to Toronto, and then Toronto to DC. Now, if you think about that, you're probably like, Bridget, you went out of the way to get home. Yeah, I passed my home to get to Toronto, and then I had to fly back. But what was my end goal? I needed to get back home. Was I happy that I had to go all the way to Canada? No. So that's just to show you guys that you got to be creative. You got to think out of the box in order to get to work. Or even if you're vacationing, you know, you can use these tips when you're vacationing and the flights may not look good, to make sure that you get out on time and get to your destination. All right, crew, so that's it for my commuting tips and tricks for you. I hope this video was helpful and gave you some tips to use once you start commuting to get to base on time. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much, and as always, stay safe and see you soon.